So welcome to this webinar series. This is the part 1 of 2 in this series, where we're going to look into how you could increase cost control by managing your indirect procurements or purchases. So the topics in this webinar is that we first is just going to look into who are Rillion, because some of you are already customers to us and you know us very well. But some are not customer to us today. Hopefully you will be in the future. I don't know, let's see. And then we just want to present who are we. And then we're going to look into different type of ways to create purchase orders and different type of purchase orders and how those could be handled. We're going to look into different purchase categories. And we're also going to look into the process from purchase to pay. So, short presentation about Rillion. We are an international company that is coming from the Nordics from the beginning. We have been in the market for more than 25 years, and we are focusing on the accounts payable process from purchase to pay. We have around 150, I think it's actually 170 employees today, and we have customers all over the world, more than 3,000 customers as is today. We work in the Nordics and also in the US directly with our own companies, but we also have partners all over the world, also in Australia and different parts of Europe. So we are a global company. Historically, we come from 2 separate companies that merged into one, and it was Palette and Sensoft that became Rillion. So that is us. And what we do is to work, as I said, with the purchase to pay process, meaning that we are helping our customers to automate the process from purchase to pay with invoice automation, requisitions, contracts, other type of documents that are related to the process. And we also have an AI engine that can help to automate the process. So this is what we do for our customers. But today we're going to focus on the procurement management and purchase management. And before we go into the details in here, I just would like to clarify this with different type of purchases that you do. Because when you talk about purchases or procurement, you often talk about direct procurement and indirect procurement. Often you also talk about maverick buying. I will not focus so much about that today, but we will focus on the direct and indirect procurement, and especially the indirect. So usually direct procurement is focused on the purchases that you do to produce your items within the company, such as if you are a manufacturing company, you need to like create things that you're reselling, or if you are buying things that you are reselling in a store or something. So that's more like direct procurement, things that you have in your business. And some things that could be a direct procurement for one company could of course be an indirect procurement for another. So, but if we look into different type of commodities and item groups, it could be like raw material and printing material, equipments, products to resell, transportation, everything that is related to your core business, so to say. And often direct procurement also requires some kind of warehouse that you need to have things on stock. So you need to know how much you have on stock of a specific item and or so on. And that is a part of the direct procurement part. And in general, most companies have a good process around the direct procurement. And also they have often clear responsibilities around this process. So that's quite often in place. But if we go to the second part, that the indirect procurement, that is everything else. So if direct procurement has to do with things that you buy into the daily business, the indirect procurement refers more to things that you buy, services or goods that is not directly connected to the product that you produce. So it's more things that is necessary to keep your business running. So it could be that I need a computer, for example, to be able to do my work. So that is things that you need to have the company actually working. And I mean, it can be a lot of different things here. It could be like facility management, things that you need to have, like you need to have office cleaning, you need to have housekeeping, or things like that that needs to have the office to work. It can be like marketing and advertising, things that you're printing, or social media events, or whatever you have, costs that is more around the marketing part. It could also be that you have consultants on hire or whatever, and that's often also falls into the indirect spend categories. IT equipment, computers, phones, all of these things that you need to have for your daily way work, but it's not directly connected to what you are producing. And often those processes are not that clear, and neither are the responsibilities. Who should approve when we need to buy new computers? Who should approve when we need to buy some like marketing material or whatever we have? And also, do we have a process for me to use when I need a new computer, or is that like just totally what we say maverick buying? I just buy it from wherever. So that's how we can differ direct procurement and indirect procurement. Everybody has both of them, and many of you have already a process for the direct procurement. Let's move on. This is another way to look at it. So the definition of direct procurement and indirect procurement can be, as I said, like direct is cost of doing business, and indirect is more cost of being in business. And if you look at the consumers for the direct and indirect, so the consumers for the direct is more the customers and the clients, whilst the indirect is more for the internal stakeholders, the employees in the company, to have them to have a great day at work. When it comes to, if we have some issues in this chain, if we are not like buying things as we should, it could actually cause a lot of disruption in the companies. And I would say here's equal between those two. One thing that is quite good to look at is the number of suppliers. Because the suppliers and also the categories that you're using when it comes to direct material are quite often few. It's not that many. But if you go to the indirect side, it's a lot of suppliers, it's a lot of categories. And that we're going to dig deeper into today. And also when it comes to the value for the company, of course here the direct purchases that you do have a higher value, and also the spend is quite often much higher. But you shouldn't negotiate, you shouldn't like look down to the indirect procurements either, because it could be a high effect if you don't have control over this. So this is just a way to look at the difference between direct and indirect purchases. So why do we need to control the indirect procurement process? As I said, this is something that quite often is not controlled. I mean, the benefits are quite easy to understand. If you do have a process for this in place, you will also have a full audit trail into the entire process. So we can follow from the need all the way until the payment that you actually pay for the things you have ordered. You will have a better predictability into the process, so you can do also forecasting to know what we are to like, what we need to buy and what we need to pay. One thing that often is why you maybe implement this kind of process is to be able to have a purchasing policy. Because if you don't have a system support for this or a process in place, it's very hard to follow a policy. So the purchasing policy could be implemented, and you will make sure that you will follow that policy. You will also make sure that we are actually buying things from the suppliers where we have a contract, and that we can make those products and services that we have an agreement on to be published for the company to buy. So we are buying from correct suppliers and the correct items from those suppliers. Another benefit is, of course, the budget processing, both when it comes to follow up on the budget that we are in right now, but also to set next year's budget. So when you have control over the purchases, you will also have easier to do your budget reporting. If we go into the saving part, it is quite often so that when you're implementing these kind of processes and solutions in a company, you have the main goal of saving one of two things. Either it is money or it's time. I will try to explain this more. I mean, everybody would like to have a cost reduction, of course, that's the common goal, but that could be done in different ways. I mean, one company might look for a specific vendor that can give them the best price for a specific item or service. That's the main goal. So we would like to negotiate a low price. That's the most important. But another business or company maybe needs to save more time than money. Meaning, for example, if I could get the goods that I order much quicker, I could actually pay a little bit more for it, but I need to have them quickly so I can continue with my business. So that's something that you need to look into if you are to set up those kind of processes. What is the main goal here in this product group? What are we looking for? Is it to get down the price or to get better service and faster deliveries, for example? So if you look at the savings, a lot of different things here. Of course, first of all, you will get control over the entire purchase process. So you can see where we are, and you can also stop purchases. Because if you look at an invoice coming in without the purchase being done beforehand, then it's very hard to say no to that invoice. I mean, you need to pay it. But if we do get a request beforehand and saying, I would like to buy a new computer, and then if IT sees that, well, Maria, there is actually a computer that we have just playing here that you could get instead, well, then we have saved some money because we don't have to buy a new computer in that case. So now if we have this in place, we could stop purchases from being done if we don't need them. A complete spend data. I mean, just to be able to follow up. What I mean with that is, for example, that if we are creating requisitions in the beginning of the process, getting that approved, then we could actually go in and look into, first of all, how much invoices have we received, but also what have we purchased, but still haven't received the invoice on. What is the value on that, and what department has spent the money, for example. So you can really have better follow-up, and also that can give you some savings because then you get insights. Having those kind of systems could also help you a lot when it comes to competitive tendering. So if you are to start buying new things from a new vendor, you could look into see, okay, from where could you get the best price? Once again, maybe the price is not the main thing here, maybe it's the time, but still, I mean, this is a way to really have competing against your suppliers, making sure that you get what you need to the correct price. And last but not least, the invoice automation. Because if we do have a purchase that is already approved, then we could match the invoices coming into that purchase, and those invoices could just be paid. It's already approved, and that will save a lot of time for everybody in the company, both for the accounts payable department, but also for the end users. So the earlier in the process that you get an approval for a spend, the better it will be. Let's look into some purchase categories. I will give you a little bit story here before I go in here and talk about this. I was visiting a customer some years ago, and we were talking about this with purchases. And I asked them, well, how do you handle your purchases? And they said that, well, we don't do any purchases. And I said, well, that's strange. I mean, you have 30,000 invoices on a yearly basis, so, and you don't do purchases. Because what we need to realize is that everything that we do get an invoice on is some kind of purchase. It could be contract, of course, but still, I mean, you have purchased a goods, some goods or services or items from a vendor. And here are some of those categories that could be in here. And some of those could be direct material for you, but it could be indirect material for another supplier, company, sorry. But overall, everything that you buy within a company is related also to a category, a product category. So it can be like IT, construction, workwear, or whatever you have. So these are just some examples of categories that you could have. And this is something that I think you should start with when thinking of implementing a process for your indirect purchases, is to identify the categories where you are buying most things. So start with those where you have the biggest winning. And if we look at the process, the earlier in the process that you get an approval of a cost, the better it is. I said that already before, but let's just repeat it again. So if we could get the approval already on the budget, that's great. We set the budget, either just the budget for the entire year and company, or we can do it on a cost level, on an account level, or project budget, or just an investment budget. But no matter, if we do get an approval on the budget, we can use that approval also later on in the process. If we look at the purchase order request, if somebody would like to buy some things within the company, and I create a purchase request in a system or outside the system, but still it needs to be a process here in place, I need to get an approval of that. And if I do get an approval, I could either take it from the budget, the approval from there, or just an approval on that purchase request. That's approved already, that's great. Then after the approval, then that could generate a purchase order that we can send to the supplier, and the supplier will deliver the goods. And the delivery is a very important part of the process, because the delivery means that, well, we have received the goods, so it's okay to pay when the invoice comes. And that is the last part here. So when that invoice arrives into your company, if we do have a purchase order, no matter if it's an indirect or direct purchase order, but still, if we have a purchase order, we could match that incoming invoice to that purchase order. And if it's a full match, well, that invoice could go directly over to the ERP system to be booked and paid, because we take the approval from the requisition or from the budget. So that is really a time-saving step, the invoice handling. When we talk about purchase orders, you often think about like products. You buy items, things to use in your production. But there are also other type of purchases, such as services and so on. And based on what you're going to buy, you need to be able to create different type of requests. And that is what we're going to look into now. So first of all, we're going to look into free text orders. The free text orders could be used both for products, but also for services. Often you use those when you have a limited volume of purchases, not when you're going to buy like thousands and thousands of the same product, then you don't do free text. A free text could be everything from like a really full free text, meaning that it's more like an email. You are telling the vendor that I would like to buy, for example, a service of the elevator that is broken, and you tell them a little bit information about where and what and how to do things. So this could be like a free text that you just fill in freely. It could be that you also have some kind of attachments that you are sending. As I said, this could be in an email as well, but now we have it in a system here. Another way to work with it is also to use forms. That is something that we work often with, to have the customer to set up a form for each and every type of service that we are going to order, to guide the users to fill in the information that is needed for the vendors to be able to deliver what we have ordered. So say, okay, an address, where to do this and what to do and who to contact and what date and so on. So create a form to make it easier to create the request from the beginning and make sure that the supplier is getting the information they need to deliver the service. Free text and forms could also be used for when you are buying products, especially if you have what I call semi-products. I don't know if that is the word for it, but for example, if I'm going to buy some flowers for somebody that has a birthday or something, flowers could be like an item. Yeah, I buy from the local flower store. Great. But I also would like to have some card together with that. I need to specify the address where to send the flowers and stuff like that. So those could be added into the forms. So delivery to this address with this congratulations on your birthday card. So both services and items. But when we talk about items, you often think about this, that you have items within the purchasing system that you can choose from. And that's great for the end users, of course. It's much easier for me to just go in and say, okay, I need a new phone, and to go in there and choose an item. But when you do so, you also need to make sure that you have someone in the company that are maintaining those items. You need to make sure that the prices are up to date, that we are removing items that is not longer valid, and adding items that are new. So having items and products in a purchasing system will require for some maintenance. So that's something to think about when you're setting up those kind of processes and systems. Items could, of course, also be for services, actually. So for example, if I'm buying a cleaning service, then maybe I have an hourly price or whatever. So I could still say, I would like to buy a cleaning service 10 hours from you for this address. So it could still be like an item, but it's more something in between an item and a product, or sorry, service. So it can be done both for products and services, but it's also a lot of maintenance that needs to be done. And the last part, I think that maybe the end users maybe loves this the most. Many web shops today are supporting what's called punch out, meaning that you could connect to the vendor's web shop and just use that as a repository for the items and the prices. So you don't have to maintain the prices. You don't have to do this maintenance part, but you let the supplier to do that. And we go in here, we don't place the order because we still need an approval. So what I do is just to take the information from this site and bring it back to your purchasing system. So you still get an approval before you're spending the company's money. Quite many web shops are supporting this, what's called punch out, but it's something that you need to talk to your suppliers about. And if we try to just put this together now, so the solution description here, what is the process? Well, when you have an invoice coming into your AP system, no matter if it's our Rillion Prime or another system, we have an invoice coming in, we can take that invoice to compare with, for example, a purchase order for direct material or indirect material. We can also do maybe contract matching to compare against the contract. And if that is it's okay if we have a purchase order and the invoice is according to the PO, those could be directly booked into your ERP system and you can do a payment. And if there is a variance, we might need to send it out for approval. And if we look at the outbound, like the purchase orders, so if we are creating purchases within your purchasing system, you can send them over to your vendors in different formats. You could use the phone, of course, and just call them. You can send us an email. We also support that you can send like XML or EDI orders to the vendors. So different ways to communicate with your vendors. So you are sending orders to your vendors, and the vendors are sending invoices to you. So this is the chain. And last but not least, we have the reporting part. To get this process going, and you need to be able to follow up on it, to be able to automate it and improve it all the time. And then you need to have the possibilities to take out reports on the process. I will show you 2 reports from our system. I mean, you maybe have some other KPIs that you are measuring, but one thing is to measure how many of our incoming invoices that could be matched to, for example, purchase orders or contracts, and how many that are more like maverick buying or outside purchase orders, and have this to then drill into it and see what vendors are behind those that is non-PO. What can we do here? You can also use the report to dig into to see what categories that we are buying against on purchase orders, and that will be like just maverick spending. Another type of report is to look at it from a vendor view. So what vendors are we buying from, and which are the biggest vendor? I did mention that in money, it's quite often those that are for direct purchases, but in number of invoices, it's quite often those that are the indirect purchases. So to look into it on a vendor level, to see where we have the vendors and how many that are using, where we are sending purchase orders and where we are not sending purchase orders. That's a good measurement as well. So to have good follow-up tools is crucial to be able to improve the process for purchase to pay. Thank you and have a great day.